The sleek black SUV screeched to a halt, spraying dust over the ripe mangoes and pineapples. Tunde, dressed in a designer agbada that cost more than a year's rent in Mushin, stepped out. His eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses, locked onto the small boy handing a customer a bag of oranges. The boy's face, his own face, mirrored from 20 years past. His heart slammed against his ribs. "Zainab," Tunde called, his voice struggling to sound calm. "We need to talk. About my son." Zainab froze, her hand tightening around the knife she used to slice watermelon. She slowly stood, wiping her hands on her simple wax print wrapper. She moved to stand between the man and her 7-year-old boy, Chidi. "Your son." Her voice was low, a dangerous rumble before a storm. "The son you said was a beggar's child. The son you denied in front of your rich wife on Victoria Island. That son." Tunde removed his glasses, revealing pleading eyes. "I was wrong. I can give him everything, school in Lekki, a future." Zainab didn't flinch. "The only thing you ever gave him was a lie. Leave my stall." Tunde didn't move. Instead, he nodded toward the SUV. Two large men in suits stepped out. Chidi hid behind his mother's legs, trembling. What would Tunde do next? Would he dare to snatch the child in the middle of the bustling Oshodi market, in front of everyone? Hi guys, welcome to Echoes of the Baobab Tree. Kindly like, subscribe to our channel and share the story with your loved ones. Thanks, let's continue the story. To understand Tunde and Zainab's confrontation, we must rewind the years. Our story begins not in wealthy Lagos, but in the vibrant, noisy heart of Soralia. Here lived Zainab, a bright-eyed 16-year-old with dreams of becoming a journalist. She lived with her parents, the Adiyemis, in a lively compound where laughter always spilled from doorways. Zainab met Tunde at a friend's birthday party in Yoba. He was 19, handsome, and worked as a junior manager at a printing press on the mainland. He spoke with confidence about contracts and clients. When he told Zainab she had a smile that could light up the third mainland bridge, she felt her heart soar. They started meeting at the National Stadium after school, sharing dreams and roasted plantain. 3 months later, a cold fear settled in Zainab's stomach. Her monthly visitor was late. A visit to a clinic in Ikeja confirmed her terror: she was pregnant. She found Tunde at his printing press, the air smelling of ink and paper. "Tunde, I'm carrying your child," she whispered. His smile vanished. He pulled her into a dusty storage room. "Zainab, this is a disaster. My boss is considering me for a big promotion. A child now will ruin everything. You have to take care of it." He pushed a wad of naira into her hand. Zainab stared at the money, feeling the first piece of her heart break off. "This is our baby, Tunde." "It's a problem," he hissed. "Handle it." Weeks passed, and Zainab's school uniform could no longer hide the truth. The whispers in her school corridor grew louder. "See her stomach, who is the father?" The shame was a heavy cloak she wore every day. Finally, a class teacher, with pity in her eyes, suggested she take a leave of absence. Zainab walked home that afternoon, the weight of her lost future crushing her. That evening, the skies over Lagos opened up. It was the kind of heavy, flooding rain that turned roads to rivers. Zainab arrived home soaked. Her father, a stern but usually kind taxi driver, was waiting. He had heard the rumors. He took one look at her rounded stomach, clear under the wet fabric, and his face hardened into a mask of pure shame. "Out," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at the compound gate. "You have spoiled my name. You have brought disgrace to this family. Get out of my house." "Baba, please." Zainab cried, the rain mixing with her tears. "I said out." He pushed her back into the downpour and slammed the iron gate shut. The metallic clang was the sound of her childhood ending. Shivering and desperate, Zainab used the money Tunde had given her to take a Danfo bus to his printing press on the mainland. She found him tidying a display. When he saw her, his eyes darted around in panic. "Are you mad? Come in here," he whispered fiercely. "My father has thrown me out. I have nowhere to go. You promised you would care for me." Before he could answer, the glass door chimed. A woman walked in, every inch a Lagos big girl. Her lace outfit was flawless, her handbag was from a designer store in Milan, and her perfume smelled like money. This was Funmi. "Tunde, my love," she said, then stopped, her sharp eyes landing on the pregnant, drenched girl. "Who is this?" Zainab looked at Tunde, her eyes screaming a silent plea. "Tell her. Claim us." Tunde looked from Funmi's rich, impatient face to Zainab's poor, hopeful one. He made his calculation. "Ah," Tunde said, forcing a laugh. "She's just the area girl. Came to beg for money. Nothing important." The words were not just a lie, they were an erasure. Zainab felt the world go silent. Funmi's lips curled in distaste. She dug into her purse, pulled out a few naira notes, and tossed them at Zainab's feet. "Here. Go and buy yourself some food." The money landed in a puddle. Zainab did not look at the money. She stared only at Tunde, who was now studying a sample calendar intently. Without a word, she turned and walked back into the drowning rain of Lagos. Hours later, exhausted and numb, Zainab found herself near a quiet street in Ikeja. A glowing sign caught her eye, Mount Zion Prayer Ministry. Refuge for the weary. With her last strength, she knocked on the gate. A woman with a kind face, Pastor Naomi, opened it. She saw the shattered girl and immediately pulled her inside, out of the rain. "Come, daughter. You are safe here." She gave Zainab dry clothes and a warm bowl of porridge. That night, as Zainab lay on a simple mat, her hand on her unborn child, a fierce new fire ignited in her soul. She would survive. She would thrive. But across town in a luxury apartment on Victoria Island, Tunde was toasting with Funmi, his secret safe, his path to a wealthy life now secure. He had no idea that the child he had just denied would one day become the key that would unlock his greatest downfall. And that process began sooner than anyone could imagine. For in the quiet prayer house, as dawn broke, a sharp pain gripped Zainab's stomach. The baby was coming. The child who would change everything was arriving, ready to fight for his place in the world. The police van's siren cut through the usual noise of Oshodi Market like a knife. 2 officers were leading a resisting Zainab, her wrist held firmly but not roughly, towards the open doors. Her eyes were wild with a mother's terror, not for herself, but for Chidi, who was being carried by a female officer, crying and reaching out for his mother. "Zainab Adeyemi, you are under arrest for child abduction and fraud," an officer announced loudly for the crowd to hear. "I am his mother. He is my son." Zainab screamed, her voice raw. Across the road, standing beside his sleek SUV, Tunde watched with a face of fabricated sadness. His wife, Funmi, stood stiffly beside him, her designer sunglasses hiding her eyes. This was their masterstroke. If pleading failed, force and lies would prevail. As the van doors closed, separating her from Chidi's wails, one question echoed in Zainab's soul: had she survived the streets of Lagos only to have her heart stolen in broad daylight? To unravel this cruelty, we must rewind a few months. After Tunde's threatening visit to her store, Zainab's life became a fortress of fear. She walked Chidi to school herself and kept him close at the store. In their penthouse on Victoria Island, Tunde and Funmi lived in luxurious silence. Years of marriage had brought property, investments, and social status, but the nursery remained empty. Doctors in London and Dubai found no cause. The void was filled with arguments and a deepening coldness. "It is a spiritual attack," Funmi declared one night after another failed fertility treatment. "We must see a real man of God." We must go to the prophet in Abeokuta. The following weekend, they drove to the ancient city. The prophet, an elderly man with eyes that seemed to see generations, listened in his simple chamber. He prayed, then fell into a quiet stillness. Suddenly, he pointed a long finger at Tunde. "There is a boy," the prophet intoned, his voice echoing. "A first son. He walks in the world, carrying your face and your forgotten sin. You have built your house on the sand of his tears. Until you acknowledge this child, your own yard will remain barren. The boy is the key." Funmi's hand flew to her mouth. She turned to her husband, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning, furious understanding. "Tunde. What is this?" Tunde's mouth went dry. His secret, buried for 7 years, had been dug up by holy hands. The car ride back to Lagos was icy. Funmi raged. "You have a child. A son. And you left him to struggle in the dirt while you sleep on silk." But her anger was tangled with desperate hope. "Find him. Bring him to me. If he is the only door to my own child, then he must come to our house." Panicked and cornered, Tunde hired a private investigator. Within a week, he had a file: Zainab Adeyemi, fruit seller, Oshodi Market. Son: Chidi. School: Oladimeji Primary School, Suralere. Photos showed them laughing, Zainab cutting pineapple, Chidi doing homework on a stool. Seeing his son's face, Tunde felt a stir, not of love, but of possession. The boy was no longer a mistake, he was a necessary tool. Tunde returned to the store, not with thugs this time, but with glossy brochures for private schools in Lekki. "Look, Zainab. He can have this. He can be a doctor, an engineer. You are a good mother, but I can give him opportunities." Zainab looked at the brochures, then at Tunde's eager face. "You can give him everything but a clean conscience, Tunde. You want to buy him to clean your spiritual debt. He is not a sacrifice. Now go." Her calm rejection infuriated him. "You are stubborn. You will ruin his life with your pride." "My pride feeds him," she said quietly, turning to serve a customer. The finality in her voice was absolute. "She will never agree," Tunde fumed to Funmi that evening. Funmi swallowed a glass of wine, her mind working. "Then we must make her agreement unnecessary. We must make the world see her as unfit. A poor, unstable market woman who stole a child." Using their connections, they spun a web. They paid associates to file a false police report. They crafted a story of a mentally ill woman who had kidnapped an infant years ago. They used their influence to push the case forward. The trap was set with legal papers and lies. On a humid Tuesday market day, the police arrived. The arrest was swift and public, designed to humiliate. As Zainab was led away, she locked eyes with Tunde. In his gaze, she saw no victory, only a hollow desperation that frightened her more than anger. In the dark, bouncing cell of the Black Maria, she held a terrified Chidi close. "Do not cry, oh mommy," she whispered, her own tears falling. "Truth is a stubborn light. It will find us." The story exploded on social media. Wealthy Victoria Island couple accuses fruit seller of child theft. The hashtag Justice for Zainab began to trend. The news reached her parents in their new home in Ajij. Her father, burdened by 7 years of regret, felt a fury he had never known. He called every radio station, every newspaper contact he had from his taxi driving days. "They are trying to steal my grandson," he shouted into his phone. "My daughter has suffered enough. We have all learned from our mistakes, but this is evil." The public sympathy swung fiercely behind Zainab. In the crowded Ikeja High Court, the air was thick with tension. Zainab, in a clean, blue buba and iro, stood beside her lawyer, Mrs. Bello, a formidable woman with a reputation for crushing bullies. Tunde and Funmi sat at the opposite table, their expensive clothes looking out of place. The prosecutor presented Tunde's fabricated story. Then, Mrs. Bello stood. "My lord," her voice boomed with authority. "This is a tragic case of a man trying to erase his past by destroying a mother. We have the child's birth certificate from Ikeja General Hospital, listing Zainab Adeyemi as mother and the father as unknown. We have 7 years of school records. We demand an immediate DNA test to settle this cruelty once and for all." Tunde's lawyer objected, but the judge, a wise older woman, overruled him. "The test will be done. The child remains with his mother pending the results." 2 weeks later, the court reconvened. The results were in, 99.98% probability of paternity. Tunde was the father. The judge's face was stern. This court finds that Mr. Tunde Bello knowingly filed false charges in a malicious attempt to separate a child from his loving and capable mother. Custody is affirmed solely with Ms. Zainab Adeyemi. "Mr. Bello, you are fined for perversion of justice and granted a restraining order. You must stay 500 meters away from Zainab and Chidi Adeyemi at all times. This is a warning against the might of the poor when they stand on truth." The courtroom erupted in cheers. Zainab scooped up Chidi, sobbing into his hair. Her parents rushed to embrace them. Outside, in the blinding Lagos sun, she was greeted by a crowd of market women and supporters, their joy a roaring song of victory. For Tunde, the fall was fast. Funmi, seeing the full extent of his deceit and the public shame, filed for divorce. The wealth, tied to her family, vanished from his grasp. He was left alone, disgraced, and barred from the son he only wanted as a tool. Zainab used the community's support to turn her stall into a proper shop. Zainab earned some fresh fruits. Years later, she caught the eye of a kind-hearted engineer named Kola, who loved her strength and adored Chidi as his own. Together, they built a family on a foundation of truth, a foundation no storm could ever wash away.